Why, hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Random Randy, and I just want to thank you for tuning in today. Today, we're going to go on kind of a random dive here. Uh, so I was looking into some things about the old world. As you all know, I'm kind of enthralled and, embedded within that whole concept. Now, something interesting that comes up is the electric city, right? Batteries, the wordplay, that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting. And do some digging around in some blogs and find an initial place to start off is what I've done here today. So I will just take you guys with me through this so that you can see what I'm seeing here. Okay. So welcome back. Thank you for tuning into the channel. Thank you for tuning in on the pod feed, everybody, and coming along on this journey with me. So, once again, guys, we're starting off somewhere, and this is stolenhistory.org. And some of this stuff, of course, you're going to get a very biased side of things. Obviously, there's nobody speaking with us who sees the Smithsonian side of things. So that's like, one kind of a side of the story that we're not going to see unless we read a book is the Smithsonian side of things. And, I'm sure that some of you out there have not dug into the Smithsonian. Let's just say that's a huge rabbit hole in itself. Now, batteries, namely the 1840 battery, the Oxford Electric Bell. And what's interesting about this, everybody, is the way that this thing functions and keeps producing energy. It's being called a battery. It's also being called a bell. Now it has the traits of both. So the exact composition of the dry piles is unknown. But it is known that they've been, coated with sulfur, so on and so forth, similar to Zamboni piles. What are Zamboni piles? We will take a look for your sake what Zamboni piles are. Okay. So this is all just turn of the 19th century, technology, electrostatic battery, pretty common materials. Okay, silver paper, zinc foil. So, I mean, these are things that your average person in this period of time would have, at a minimum, have been able to access most likely, even if they would have been kind of pricey or difficult to acquire. Keep in mind that there are people out there just because, us armchair researchers and us, 9 to 5ers aren't out there doing these experiments. Like, don't think that they're not being done. Don't think that there aren't people out there putting science through its paces and all of its beauty. All right. A lot of these results that come to fruition and things are just buried on the financial side of things, but that doesn't mean that they're not taking place and that there's not like this crazy, beautiful, intricate world of invention happening out here in the world. All right. And that hasn't happened in the past. This has been going on. All right. Nonstop. And so this is one of those examples of something that might come out of the ingenuity of the thoughts of man. Okay. Now they consider this an experiment. This is the Oxford Electric Bell. Now, let's just go ahead and replay this so that you can see what we're talking about here.
This is the Clarendon Dry Pile, or the Oxford Electric Bell as Wikipedia prefers to call it. It's an electric bell powered by 2 dry piles, which are a very early form of battery, that has been ringing since 1840. The verb
Okay.
ringing is technically correct, but you'd be hard pressed to hear anything even if you remove the protective glass dome. If you look very closely, you'll be able to see the clapper vibrating gently between one bell and the other. The amount of charge it carries as it does so is so incredibly minuscule that the charge in the dry piles powering it, which are off the top of this video, you can't quite see it here, has yet to run out.
So it's been running since 1840. Okay. So it's very interesting stuff, right? Now, that's just a brief introduction to what we're looking at here. Now, this was purchased by Robert Walker uh, and set up in 1840. So he purchased the rights or the patent or something. right around this time period in question, the mid 1800s, a major shift and transition happening in what ownership as a whole looks like, both on the personal level and on the monetary uh, side of things. So there's a big change happening at this point. Anyway, try not to dig too far into what all of that looks like. It can be kind of confusing unless you understand that this is a commonplace, is continuing to happen, and has continued indefinitely back into the past. Okay. So batteries, all right, the Zamboni pile, very early stuff. Okay. Modern construction started, they started changing how they were building batteries and things back in the 1800s. All right. So galvanic cells, voltaic piles, look into some of this stuff so that you can understand how energy transfers and what a power source or a battery actually is and looks like. The reason that that's important, and we'll take a look here and dig a little bit further into this Oxford Electric Bell real quick. Now, the Smithsonian Institute just considers this an experiment. They're like, oh, well, we can't open this thing up. We can't, find out how it's built because it would ruin the experiment. Okay. And what I ask you to imagine when you're looking at a device like this in a very small format, inside of a glass shelf, inside of a glass bubble, like imagine this thing in like massive scale. Imagine a building, say, with a couple of towers. And in these towers are built these cells. And in between the two towers, you have a plumb that drops down and hangs between two bells, which may be in a subfloor, which may be on the first floor. We don't know. Just imagine, for sake of imagining, imagine a giant device like this. Okay. Because let's say this doesn't generate a whole heck of a lot of power. But if you scale this up, then you scale up the power, right? And if in a point in time where all you're looking to power for the most part are light bulbs so that things can stay lit at night, and possibly other electric experiments and things. So you would need to generate your own power. And so I'm I'm of the mind that people have generated their own power just like they are today. You don't hear or see much of it. I mean, it's very accessible, guys, this free energy information to build your own generators and things. Like, my goodness, the information is there. Okay. The information is there. And furthermore, the information, go to Stolen History and look at their library. All right. The free energy 2,000-page PDF is sitting right there. So the information is there for us, right? And so we can go on our whole lives believing like, oh, well, the Smithsonian Institute definitely has my best interest in mind, guys. You know what I mean? They definitely have our best interest in mind. They're going to tell us everything they know. They're going to tell us everything they know, because it's in our best interest to know everything. Now, think about that thought for just a moment. Think about some things that you've learned throughout your lifetime, some difficult truths. Were there times where it was not in your best interest to know certain things? Just from a personal level, I just put that question out there. So just think about that. But anyway, so the Smithsonian gatekeeper to the enigmas, right? This being one of those enigma, the Smithsonian believes a clergyman physicist, Robert Walker, acquired this device in 1840. Since then, it may have rung over 10 billion times. Is this perpetual motion? Question mark. The Clarendon Library says no. Laboratory, rather. So, the Smithsonian's telling us, guys, this is not perpetual motion. Just because this thing is creating its own energy to continue bringing indefinitely does not mean there's anything perpetual about this. Now, are we talking about kinetic motion, like on a what, atomic level? Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about motion here? We realize that energy is a transfer of motion, even if it's not technically mass or matter, right? Like, so this is where like the terminology gets really blurry. Everything gets really like distracting and like no, That's not quite how it works, Randy. Energy is not matter, ergo, blah blah blah, right? So no, listen, energy is matter, is energy, intention is energy, without motion, etc. I mean, you can go on and on. These things all tie into each other, and it's really beautiful the way that it works, actually. But we are led to disbelieve these beautiful things, and one of those things, like looking into the Tartaria subject, guys. um so I was looking at some batteries. Let's start here. I started looking at some other batteries. Alkaline, the Canadian in the early 1900s, who revised this alkaline battery. We've got the nickel iron battery made by Edison, of course, right? So we have different versions. Now, what the thought is is what if batteries took on a different form in the past than we really know today, right? And what if this is just one example of what a battery might look like in the past? We see tons of bells, right? Everywhere. Many buildings with two towers. You know what I mean? So, I don't think it's a stretch to think that possibly in the past we had devices that were the size of buildings and or maybe small towns that were functioning to provide a certain group of society with a certain end result, like electricity, like communication with each other. And it was just kind of kept in the shadows. Okay. And I want to show you something interesting that I came across. And this is where it gets good, guys. This is where you really get into it. How to turn a building into a giant battery. So, as you all might know, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like, there's really not. This stuff has happened before. And we have a prime example of a typical 20th century building looking like a battery. And they're telling us how turning concrete into a battery might sound like an impossible concept, but the technology dates back to the early 20th century. So when I see this in my mind, I automatically knock a century or two off here. Probably the 18th century is when this idea generates from. But, then each individual building owner would be responsible for the upkeep of their own electricity. They would then need, mechanical ingenuity. So they would have to hire somebody to maintain this stuff for them. And what these power companies that have, ownership of everything now have done is consolidated all of that within their system. Okay. So you just imagine a time before when that system was different. Maybe it was in its early years, or maybe it was in its conception. And the system we were looking at before could have been something like this: the building you live in, and the bridges you cross, and the sidewalks you traverse could one day store electricity. New research from Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden has shown that, with a minor tweak, the concrete used to build many of the world's buildings and infrastructure projects can be turned into a rechargeable battery. By embedding a typical concrete mix with short carbon fibers, an iron coated mesh of carbon fiber, and another mesh coated in nickel, the concrete can be made to conduct and store small amounts of electricity. Incorporated at the scale of an apartment building, bridge, or citywide sidewalk network, the energy storage capacity could add up to provide a modest but potentially renewable source of electricity. Now, when they're talking also about these sidewalk inlays, as you're walking across the sidewalk, there's a different method they could use to create a pressure sensitive concrete that would then transfer energy piezoelectrically. All right. The creating energy if people are walking over a certain area. So this stuff is not like woo woo, guys. Like, this stuff exists and has, and they're like telling you that it's at least from like the beginning of the 20th century. But you know how like incognito, information invention is, right? Like, this all takes place behind the scenes. So my question is are we looking at something that has been laid out in the past? I think that this has happened over and over and over again, guys, and we're just discovering this stuff. And that's what the big secrets about the pyramids and different cityscapes of the past, that's what the secrets are being covered up. Why does it look like a circuit board? Because it was one. Okay. does that take away from the fact that they use these energy hotspots for things like events and things today? Now, I think there is a different type of energy also being harvested and created here. But when we're talking about electricity as we know it, I think for further back in the past, we had a grid that was self-serving and self-sustaining, and it's just been consolidated since then. So that's the idea, right? Now, their experiment using two square slabs of concrete just a few inches wide was able to generate enough of a charge to power a small LED light. So, of course, this is not a lot of energy that we're talking about, but this is a very small area here. Two square slabs of concrete just a few inches wide was able to power. So imagine, expand that out, apartment building size. People always moving around, walking around in there on their floors. If you had that piezoelectric thing going on, you can create power. Um, you're also, creating power here just by it existing. Okay, just by the nature of what it's made out of. All right, stores energy. And you wonder why like these giant ziggurat places existed and were like of a concrete nature, or why these big buildings that we're seeing like just destroyed in the in the middle 1800s, why these were so full of resources and metals and things that the powers that came into being wanted to reclaim for themselves. So this is a possibility that I'm presenting, is what I'm saying here. Now, turning concrete into a battery might sound like an impossible concept, but the technology dates back to the early 20th century when nickel and iron batteries were being developed as an alternative to heavy lead acid batteries. This is the nickel iron battery. So, again, I think these placeholder guys, these Edisons, these Teslas, are referring back to a once great society. You could call it Atlantis, you can call it Lemuria, whatever you want to call it. Like there was a previously great society before this cycle, right? Like it seems to be cyclical. So this is the Edison nickel iron battery. Has some issues with cold weather, because it has to be ventilated, so the cold weather can harm it. Anyway, so once again, they say the concept needs to be further developed, and I'm sure that they are to a certain degree developing this concept a little bit further, but I think it has already been developed pretty far. And we're going to look at another thought here. And this is the kicker, guys. This is what I really hope that you're still tuning in for. So you can see this, and I will include the link to this here in the description. But battery bricks turn your entire building into a giant battery. So we're just being shown, guys. Again, renewables are the future, but the electricity they generate needs to be stored so it can be used when you need it. Okay. Why all the red brick buildings? Well, they needed light when they needed light, right? So, of course, this goes into asking you to consider using solar panels to come off the gas grid, like the ones sold, of course, by y'all savior Elon Musk. Solar City is his solar energy conglomerate there. Now, so let's say we do have all of these beautiful solar panels and things, and when it comes down to it, now we got to store this electricity. So there's another alternative looming, guys, looming. An alternative is looming. How is that? How's an alternative looming over us? Is it like doom filled? Like what's going on? Did this alternative lead to the doom of the previous era? Is that why it would be looming? Just a random thought, guys. But you know what I mean? Like, so you got to pay attention to the words that are used. After researchers at Washington University in the US found a way to convert standard red bricks, which are some of the world's cheapest and most familiar building materials, and can easily, and get this, guys, and can even now weirdly replicate themselves using bacteria to create more. So when we open this can of worms on the old world, what are we opening, guys? What are we opening? This is insane. The self-replicating red bricks. So this, like, all right, this by itself, all right, this whole issue of like, where did all the bricks come from? How did this happen? Like, dude, if they had this process figured out back then, no wonder we don't understand. No wonder we don't get it. Like, how is this? I've got to have to check up on this a little bit more. Let's take a look at this. All right, because this is blowing my mind. You guys are just on this ride with me, okay? I was just looking into batteries and the ideas that buildings might have a part to play in the you know, this is weird, right? Living bricks can reproduce, could help create self-healing green buildings. Did we have this in the past? Guys, I wonder, dude. Okay, so let's go back. Let's finish looking at this real quick, and then we'll go down that tangent. That's wild, dude. Okay. So, and this is something that I've understood for a long time, that these types of materials can store energy, and that they are like photovoltaic, or like reactive with the sunlight to a certain degree, depending on what's blended in to these materials. So, you know, researchers have developed a method to make or modify smart bricks that can store energy until required for powering devices, um, re- turns them into supercapacitors. So our method works with regular bricks or recycled bricks, and we can make our own bricks as well. So unbelievable, right? Like 65-cent bricks, and they power this light. This is a regular brick that they've bought. It seems as though they've laid in some form of a metal, right, in between the bricks, which is what you would do, is you would create a mortar a certain way, and boom, you got, look at that thing lighting up, right? So it's really incredible. Walls and buildings made of bricks already occupy large amounts of space, which could be better utilized if given additional purpose for electrical storage. While some architects and designers have recognized the humble brick's ability to absorb and store the sun's heat, this is the first time anyone has tried using bricks as anything more than thermal mass for heating and cooling. I think that that's a joke. I think that that's garbage. I think that this stuff had been in place and was part of the technology that needed to be removed through all of the fires and all of that madness that we saw happening and still are seeing happen to this day. Okay. There's a reason why when these old temples get felled, they, within these supposed solid granite columns, we have metallic inserts and things. Okay. So there's a reason for all this stuff. You just got to, hopefully be paying attention and be open to the possibility that we come from a beautiful, complicated, very deep cultured past, that we're being passed something that is just fairy tales and pixie dust. All right. Like this this push for Tartaria, which is kind of like, it's getting this like life of its own and turning into this thing that maybe it wasn't. But what it needs to be, in my opinion, is it needs to be showing people these are possibilities for us today, now. Okay, we can implement this stuff. It's out here on the fringes of this of society. And here's what's interesting: the 311 Institute, 3 times 11 is 33. So these groups understand this stuff. They're just waiting for the lot of us to decide that we want it. Everyone's floating around just happy with upside down clown world. And the more you buy into it and talk about it and hate on it and all this stuff, you're just feeding it more and more and more. We need to be focusing on making it known that we can do these things. More people need to understand this, like, not just concrete, but listen, bricks. And what do we build out of? Bricks and concrete. We could be like storing all of our energy indefinitely. We could be powering like we could have such an excess of energy so easily. It just takes cooperation. And this is what the powers that are in place now, that's what they have that most of us don't, is cooperation. So I know, crazy tangent, but like, look at this stuff. Isn't this mind blowing? And then this fact: living bricks that can reproduce could help create self healing green buildings. Unbelievable, dude. As a simple combination of sand, gelatin, and bacteria used for the first time to create living bricks that can replicate themselves and are as strong as cement. Unbelievable. If the brick is cut in half, then within a couple of days there are two more complete bricks. Whoa, dude. Mind blowing, isn't it? So, if you want to know why they want to put carbon nanofibers and everything, like, listen, it all makes a lot of sense. How we use it for our betterment is really depending on us. I'm not saying that transhumanism is like awesome or not awesome. Like, I personally don't really care. I'm sure some people will have the choice and will make the choice that they want to be part robot or whatever, and more power to those people, I guess. And there will be a large group that wants to stay standard human. Sure, okay. Like, you got to admit, through all of the, like, you can call it propaganda, but I just call it movies and film and stuff that we've been fed, like my entire life been fed. Seeing on Star Trek, you got the Borg and all of this, right? And then this pivot over the last 10 years or so to change robot humans from being the bad guys who are after us, like in Terminator, to like the good guys that are helping us, like in everything that comes out currently. So, you see there's a purpose there. Like, is it evil or is it dark? I don't, dude, guys, I don't know if I like subscribe to evil. I don't know if I subscribe to it. Like, evil might just be not implementing all of this stuff that we have an opportunity to look at. Like, I'm not an engineer or, an architect, but boy, if I was, I would hope to have been made aware of this. Like, this is incredible. I've never heard anything of this, just kind of stumbled across it after looking into batteries and things. Um, which says something about the algorithm of the internet, right? It's pointing me in this direction somehow. So that's kind of crazy. The bricks can be exponentially manufactured just like cell division. How crazy is that, dude? The process involves heating the divided bricks until they are liquid and adding a new gel and allowing the bacteria to grow for 6 hours. So, all right, listen, we're not only going to have bacteria to feed us, but like this bacteria is going to house us too. That's crazy, dude. I think that this is all just us re-implementing something that we removed from nature a long time ago. And so we're just rolling it out now, like little by little, to roll out the artificial nature. And I don't, like, is that horribly bad? Like, we clearly destroyed all that nature was in the past. At least that's what it seems to me. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of our responsibility to build that back to a certain degree. And maybe this is how we do it. I think this is just absolutely wild. I'm going off like on a weird transhumanism tangent and whatever. And like, I just don't, guys, to be honest, like, I just don't get with the like anger of everything. Like, everything is like this driving angry force, you know. When you look at any propaganda or media, like, it's driving you to be upset about something. Unless it's like puppy videos, then you're supposed to be happy. But like, what if puppies make you sad? I don't know. You know what I mean? So like, everything could potentially make somebody sad, but but like, dude, you want to know why they like decided, all right, all your average people should not live in beautiful brick homes? Because guess what? If your average Joe was like, oh shit, you serious? Like, all I have to do is replace the mortar in my house with, a metallic, like nickel based mortar, and like I can have light for free because the sun beats on my house. Like, that's amazing. So, you understand why they had to go and give us all drywall and, you know, treated wood and all of this and that. So, just it's crazy, right, guys? I mean, bricks bricks are something. I've known that they were like an incredible part of this puzzle of the old world, but like, I never knew that this is a possibility. And if this is happening now, you can imagine, guys, this could have been a very valid possibility in the past. We already like are at a loss with what the concretes really were in the Roman times and things like that. So it's incredible, right? It's incredible. So let's touch back and just take another brief look at that Oxford Electric Bell, and just to kind of ring on the thought that, you know, what if we had this built into structures? They would generate, that not only would they generate their own like perpetual motion, but if you had the right frequency of bells here, you could create that standing wave, which would create energy for all of the aerials that you would have around. You know what I mean? And are you familiar with what aerials are? Well, I'll show you briefly. We'll just take a moment. So, standing wave then would make that waveform accessible to aerial antennae. All right, much like we see some old buildings, and currently this is what an aerial is, right? Now, if you go back, and of course they're not going to show us, but you see the different shapes of aerial antennas. Okay, these are all, obviously receiving signal from radio waves. So even if, guys, even if in the past they weren't using aerial antennas to send and receive like signals and communicate, that waveform in itself is energy. So, I'm just saying, these aren't the finest examples, but if you're into fractal antennas and old world buildings and all of the antennae they have off of them, then you would understand that, you know, these folks, some of them at least, these folks knew that that energy was key, and they knew it was a big part of everything, and somehow we've completely forgot. And I see this information like slowly making a come around, uh but I still see so many people buying into the current narrative and the current like way of things, and believing that like any of this war is actually like legitimately because somebody's upset with somebody else, or like, come on, guys, like this is all written, dude. It's a play. Like, yeah, maybe like the Red Hot Chili Peppers say, this life is more than just a read through. Maybe it is. You know what I mean? Um, and kind of like the System of a Down say, we're one in the river and one again after the fall. Maybe it's something like that too. And we're just on our way back to being one again. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys, for tuning in and everything. And man, it's been amazing looking into stuff and finding out like so many different things about the world and about myself and everything. So, I just want to extend my gratitude to everybody who's like kind of coming along this ride with me. And to be quite honest, I'm just looking forward to seeing where we go as a community, like as a whole, like a human community. I see a lot of beautiful things happening. um I feel like the more I focus on the beautiful things, the less I see of the negative things, and I hope that that's the case for you all too. I hope you're able to direct your focus and your intent towards the beautiful, uplifting experiences in life, although those can be fleeting. So, I just wanted to extend that to everybody, and say thank you for tuning in and everything. And if you've got any insight as to any more of these like strange like connections with the old world, with bricks, with batteries, I mean, throw a comment or two my way. I'm really glad that I stumbled across this stuff, because I was thinking, man, I don't really want to dig further and further into all of these wars, because all of these wars, guys, they're just a mechanism for this change. And that's like all the way to this day. Okay. It's a certain volume or degree of people have agreed to have the experience, and are here having that war experience. And sometimes I can't help but look at everything as though it is just a game and just for my own betterment. That's how I stay sane in this world, by approaching every possibility and problem and issue as though it is a challenge that needs to be overcome and addressing it accordingly. And this is not so much something that I've learned in school or been indoctrinated to do. I've had to show myself how to walk this path. Of course, with some guidance. I would be remiss if I didn't include the fact that I do have guidance. While some might consider guidance from outside themselves, I'm not so sure about that. I think that we do have it within. So that gets its whole big rabbit hole of complicated, ness. But I wanted to share that with you guys about the red bricks and, about batteries and about this self-perpetuating, self-charging battery pile, the Oxford Bell. It's incredible when you see these types of things from a bygone era, and it really is. I mean, this thing was bought from somebody, and then they just sit on it. They just throw it under this dome and sit on it, just like everything else. Like they've been sitting on this brick situation for a long time, right? They knew about this, guys. It was in place before. Um, so that's crazy. Anyway, I just want to thank you all once again, and have a wonderful rest of your whatever it is, morning, noon, or night. And I hope this information reaches you well.